Luxury is a state of mind, which is why big and sumptuous SUVs like these, they make you feel like you're levitating. But the question is, which one of these, the Mercedes-Benz GLS or the BMW X7, gives you the ultimate state of higher being? Picking a clear winner between a Mercedes and BMW, well, it is not an easy job. And since these SUVs are the very definition of German excessiveness, well, it makes our jobs all the more difficult. But still, we have narrowed it down to 10 questions which we think are going to be the most relevant for someone splurging over a crore and a half on these big SUVs. So, let's get going. Yes, you read that right. Modern SUVs aren't designed to look pretty, they aren't aesthetically pleasing. Instead, they are designed to make an impact, to scare the living daylights of mere mortals. And in that regard, the BMW X7, well, just look at it. It just gets the job done with its big nostrils, this muscular front, and it has that stance that will offend people. If you see this car in your rearview mirror, you are going to just step out of the way. Now, compared to the BMW, the Mercedes, well, it does have a lot of presence. It is also slightly longer. So when it's sitting on the road, it definitely has that sense of power that you want from a big luxury SUV. Plus, Mercedes has given it a facelift, so it has got a bolder front grille, but still it's not as in your face as the BMW. But overall, again, in terms of exterior design, I think the BMW's design is more impactful, in the sense more offensive, and I think with modern car buyers, with their modern taste, this is the one they're going to prefer over this. Now this is where it gets interesting, because for most people, BMW and Mercedes, well, they are sort of equal. They are the German heavyweights. But personally, I think I'm a fan of BMW because, again, I'm an enthusiast and BMW has that sheer driving pleasure and whatnot. So it has that sort of history. But overall, in the larger scheme, I have to say it's brand Mercedes which has got more allure for luxury car buyers, and that's because it's Mercedes and it is traditionally considered rich. So if you ask a layman, well, they're always going to say maybe they love the design of the X7, but for brand value, brand power, I think Mercedes still has an edge over BMW, and that's also something that's reflected in the monthly or yearly sales of Mercedes cars in India. In fact, last year Mercedes managed to ship close to 2,500 units of the GLS in the country, and that's not just down to how great this product is, but it's also got a lot to do with this three-pointed star. Now, if you talk about the interior and features, I think Mercedes has done a fairly good job, because the GLS, as we always know, like I said in the beginning also, it is all about being excessive. But the great thing is it has got the space, but it also looks quite luxurious, quite premium, and everything, the attention to detail is just phenomenal. I really love these AC vents, for instance. I love the lacquered finish. You've got this big Mercedes touchscreen, which is basically you find in all Mercedes. So there's the new MBUX system, and you've got a big infotainment screen, and you've got a big digital instrument cluster, which is customizable in a million ways, I think, because there is a lot to unpack here. Now, the quality and fit and finish, no complaints on that front as well. And I really love the steering wheel as well, because it has got that nice sheen, has got that finish. The other thing is the features. Now, this being a Mercedes, this being the flagship SUV, well, it also gets a lot of features. So you've got ADAS features in this car as well, and in terms of creature comforts, you've got heated and cooled seats. That is quite nice, but you don't get seat massages, which is quite surprising in a car this big and this luxurious. So it's not quite the S-class of SUVs in that sense, because the standard equipment, it doesn't have seat massages as standard. Is it better than the BMW? Well, let's hop into the BMW and see what all it has to offer compared to the Merc, and then we'll take a final call. The X7's interior in comparison to Mercedes, it feels completely different in the sense it is a little minimalistic. As you can see, there are no big AC vents here. It has just got these nice buttons over here, and the AC vents are concealed behind the dashboard, which comes in a carbon fiber finish. Looks quite classy for sure, but overall the dashboard design, like in a typical BMW, it is tilted towards the driver, so it feels more driver focused. Everything, all the controls are tilted towards me, so it feels quite nice in that regard. You've got your iDrive controller over here, so it is quite practical. You've got two cup holders, you've got a USB port as well, you've got a wireless charger, so again very similar to what Mercedes offers. Coming to the screens, it is also a similar layout as the Mercedes, as it has also got a big slab of screens. You've got a digital instrument cluster, and you've got this nice infotainment screen. Now in terms of functionality though, I think I prefer BMW screen because it somehow feels better, more intuitive, and I think the touch response is also slightly better here. So personally I prefer this one over the Mercedes. But overall, I think this cabin is also as good quality. Everything here feels top notch. And if you talk about quality, fit and finish, I think between this and the Merc, it is a coin toss because it's more or less the same with both the cars. Now, the one thing that I don't really like about this car is that the steering wheel, it feels very BMW again. It is the M Sport trim. So you've got this M logo here. The steering is very nice to hold. It's quite small as well. But I think the buttons over here, they are very plasticky, and it doesn't give you that crore-and-a-half rupee feel. It is similar to 3 Series, I think, in that regard. So it doesn't feel like, you know, you're holding onto something very special. Now the main difference between the two is the list of standard features, and I think BMW has skimped on some key features which shouldn't be missing in an SUV that costs a crore-and-a-half. So it doesn't feel as feature rich. You don't get seat massages here as well, which is quite surprising because the entry-level X1 also gets seat massages, but this doesn't have it. The seats in itself, I think they are quite sporty, they are quite nice, but they're not as accommodating as they are in the GLS. So in that regard also, I think the GLS feels more spacious. It feels wider than this car, especially from the front row, especially from the driver's point of view. So overall, if I have to talk about the interior and features, I think, like I said, it is very close between these two cars. But for me, I think the Mercedes kind of feels more special. And the other thing is also Mercedes has more standard features.
Stop that. Stop that. Yeah, I hear him chat to the noise. Can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys. Nice keep walking. Yeah, just too sharp with the prize.
I'm driving the BMW first, and it is a familiar unit. This has the 40i, which you've already experienced in different iterations of BMWs, like the M340i has the same engine. And in that application, it definitely feels more sporty, but this is a much bigger and heavier SUV. But in this application also, it feels as thrilling, to be very frank. It is a very refined motor. You can rev it all the way up to 6,500 RPM still, but nothing filters into the cabin. So in that respect, I think this is a great engine if you are looking at it from a luxury car perspective. The other thing that I want to talk about in terms of performance is also the gearbox. Now this gets the familiar ZF 8-speed gearbox that we have seen in multiple BMWs. And this gearbox and BMW engines, they are sort of a marriage made in heaven, because the way they complement each other, it is just out of this world. I think that's what makes this engine so alive, and I think to better it, Mercedes will have to do something really special.
Yeah, I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys. Not so tough.
So the Mercedes engine is, in terms of specs, it is more or less similar to BMWs. In terms of performance also, I think it is more or less similar because it is very refined. It loves to be revved, and there is performance throughout the rev range. There is no turbo lag as such because it also gets that torque fill, that electric torque fill. So overall, nothing wrong with the powertrain. And in terms of outright performance also, it is very quick. And of course, it's not BMW quick, but it's not that slow as well, because this can do 0 to 100 in 6.1 seconds. So that is quite brisk for a car of this shape and size. BMW's cabin feels a lot quieter compared to Merc's. There is some noise that filters into the cabin, to be very frank, and especially when you're at high revs, you can hear that noise coming inside the cabin. Now sure, this does get acoustic, noise cancelling, windshield and front windows, but even then there is a lot of noise that filters into the cabin, and that's something that you are going to notice wherever you are sat in this car as soon as the driver pins the throttle and the revs climb upwards of 3000 or 4000 revs. Now, having said that, the noise I'm talking about is not actually noise. It is a very juicy and raspy exhaust or induction noise that comes into the cabin, because I quite frankly enjoy it. It's not coarse, it's not unrefined. It is good noise, what you'll call, in terms of engine performance. So I quite like it, to be very frank. But of course, if you are someone who's just sitting in here for comfort, you'll notice that the cabin is not as quiet as it is in the BMWs. Now, another thing that I want to touch upon is the gearbox. Now, this gets Mercedes' 9G-tronic, which is an automatic gearbox, and it is smooth, it is seamless, it is ever ready with its shifts, and everything is perfect about this gearbox until the time you want a quick overtake or you step on the throttle pedal. Now that's when you'll catch the gearbox sort of napping, because the kickdown, it is not that fast. It tends to be a little jerky as well. So let's suppose right now I'm doing 40 kilometers per hour, 1,500 RPM, and if I so it went from 6th to 2nd gear in a jiffy for sure, but you do feel that jerk. Of course, you might think that I'm in sport mode or everything is sharp in this setting, but that's not the case. This car doesn't even get a sport mode. It only gets comfort, eco and off-road mode. The kickdown, it is quite aggressive, and it's not just the driver who is going to feel it. Even if you're sat at the back, you'll feel this jerk that comes. It's also there in the BMW, but in the Merc, it is a little more violent. So overall, I have to say, in terms of drivetrain, I'd still go with my initial opinion, which is that the BMW does it better than the Mercedes. Okay, so from the front row, which is the driver's seat, I have to say that it's quite simple, to be very honest. I'm not going to beat around the bush and say that it's close between the Merc and the BMW, because when it comes to handling, well, BMWs, they've always felt special, and the X7 is no different, because like I said, when you sit in this car, it feels more focused towards the driver and the way you sit in this car. Of course, it doesn't feel as low as the Merc though, because the driving position is still quite high. You don't really go all the way down. Now the seat, for me, I have put it all the way down, but still I am perched a little on top, and it's not as low as the Merc is. But the driving experience, well, I have to say that despite being on air suspension, despite being a big SUV, you would assume that, you know, this is not as great to drive. But the body control of the X7, it is phenomenal, especially this M40i. When you put it in sport mode, it corners sort of flat compared to the GLS, and the way it goes around bend, the way it feels, the way it shrinks around you, well, that's really remarkable. It feels like I'm driving an X3. It doesn't feel like I'm driving a big 5-meter SUV, because that's the beauty of BMW. The Mercedes is more relaxed. It's not meant for shattering lap times, or it's not meant to go fast around bends. Well, and it behaves like that also. It's not a lousy handler. I'm not saying that it feels uninspiring to drive. It is quite good. The body control is great, and it definitely feels car-like to drive in that regard. But is it as tied down as the X7? Well, no, it's not, because it is a big SUV. It feels its weight, and it feels more vast. It feels more significant from behind the wheel, and even when you're driving it, you can feel that you're carrying a lot of mass, and you've got a lot of car behind you. So that's the feel that you get when you drive the Merc. And if you go fast around a bend, even though the front is gripping, there is a fair bit of body roll still. Like I said, it gets air suspension, but there is no sport mode, so it's not firming up the suspension to the point where it feels sharp, or it's not a BMW taut in that sense. So in terms of handling and driving experience, I think it's the BMW which does a better job. Considering the fact that a lot of customers are going to be spending a lot more time in here in the second row, well, this is a make or break deal for both these SUVs. So we are sitting in the BMW first, and as you can see, there is a lot of space. There is a lot of room here. The headroom is also quite good. I'm sitting quite high here though, but still it is very spacious. Now the other thing that I want to talk about is that the seat is quite comfortable. It comes with a 6-seat setup, which means it gets these captain seats. And there is a 7-seater version as well, but that's only available with the diesel. But again, there are no complaints on that front because it's quite spacious and the seat scope is quite wide. So I'm perched in here quite comfortably. Then you've also got electric controls to recline the seat, and it can go all the way to the back. You can really lounge in here comfortably. So that's quite great. And you've also got this nice pillow here, so your head can rest over here, and it has a very calming effect on you. On the whole, I have to say that there is something missing here, and it's the fact that it doesn't quite feel as special, because this version, it doesn't get many creature comforts, especially for the second row occupant. Now there is no screen, there is no infotainment screen, even though there is a slot, so that's missing. The other thing is the seats, they're not ventilated. There is no seat massage system as well, and I think that is a big miss, especially again considering the price of the car. You want all the luxuries in here. Yes, even the Merc doesn't get it, but we'll talk about that in detail, how the rear space feels. But overall in this cabin, I think in terms of comfort, in terms of space, yes, you've got everything, but I still think it doesn't feel as special as it should. I think this is where Mercedes is going to pull a clear lead ahead of the BMW, and that's because the rear seat experience, the second row experience of the Merc is really phenomenal. In the sense, compared to the BMW, this feels much nicer. Now why is that? First of all, there is a lot of room, plus compared to the X7, if you have noticed, in the X7 I was sitting with my knees slightly pointing upwards. The floor felt it was a little too high, so if you're a taller passenger, probably it is going to be more uncomfortable for you guys. But in the Merc, it is perfectly reclined, and I think I've got a lot of legroom as well. The other thing is the seats are very cushiony, they're very nice, the support they give, and even this soft pillow here, well, everything feels top notch. And I think overall this cabin also makes you feel more special. That's because you also get a lot of gadgets, like for example, you've got this rear seat infotainment screen here. It is a touch screen. It has the exact same functionality as the front infotainment screen, and that's not just it. You also get a tab here, which is a Samsung tab, and you can just take it out and you can use all the functions from here. So this is giving the control back to the owner when they are at the back, which is not the case with the BMW. So overall, in terms of comfort, in terms of how it makes you feel, how special it feels, and feel good factor of the Merc is definitely better than the BMW. So in terms of second row comfort, I have to say that the Mercedes definitely is the winner. And I think for a lot of customers, or a lot of customers in this segment, this is going to be a deal breaker for the X7 for sure. Let's start with the Merc. Now first things first, we have to see how easy it is to access the third row. So just press a button and it's all electric. Okay, so now that I'm here, I've got this button again, and it's again electric operation. So there is no space here, as in a full-size adult can't sit here. I mean, you don't have to have legs here, to be very frank. If you want to enjoy the second row as it is, as in full comfort, if you want to stretch out in the second row, don't expect any adult to fit in here. As in, this space is okay, but there's virtually no legroom. So overall, if you're used to sitting in a Mercedes, if you're used to sitting in a luxury car, I don't think you're going to enjoy here that much. This place is best left for your pet or kids, really small kids, below 10 I would guess. But now let's swap the seats, let's go inside the BMW and see if its third row is any better. Okay, so first things first, it doesn't have fully electric control because you have to press this manually. Okay, it's not going still. Yeah, so you have to tilt it all the way to the front and then it starts the procedure. Now compared to the GLS, I think there is more room here even for my frame, which is quite surprising because the second row is set exactly where it was before. So well, impressive. I think this definitely has more room and I'm not as cramped as I was in the GLS for sure. And even headroom wise, I think this is better than the Merc. So really surprised because I thought, given the size of the Merc, given the bulk, given how huge it looks, I thought that was going to offer more space. But surprisingly, it's the BMW that has done a better job here. Now, you know what's the most surprising bit here is the fact that even though Mercedes is great, very luxurious, and it is quite refined, whatever it is, but when it comes to the ride quality, it's the BMW, which despite being a great handler, it is better in that regard as well. Now, the suspension on this car, it feels more supple, and especially at low speeds where the Merc feels a little firm, the BMW actually feels more absorbent and nothing filters into the cabin, in the sense there is no road noise, there is nothing, and even if you go over sharp bumps at low speeds, it doesn't thud through. So for me, I think I'm really surprised because the X7, in terms of comfort, in terms of ride quality, is the better car here. Yes, in terms of hardware, both the cars get the same sort of suspension, and I'm surprised with that because for me that is the biggest difference, because usually a Merc would always ride better than a BMW, but in this case the roles have reversed. Coming to boot space and practicality, it is a mixed bag, but let's start with the Mercedes because a few things are very evident here. Now, this definitely has a bigger boot. As you can see, it has a larger opening as well. And when you come to the BMW, you'll realize that it looks quite small, but the party pieces, it has got this split setup. Now, that is quite cool. They come with suspension lowering buttons. So because they have got air suspension, even the Merc has that feature. So you just press the button and the suspension drops the ride height down. So that is quite practical. Even the Merc has got it. But the other thing that I want to discuss here is the fact that they have got a lot of buttons. Now in the BMW, you've got these two buttons. If you can come closer, I'll show it to you. It says maximum luggage and there is maximum room for passengers. Now if you put maximum luggage, it'll drop the third row electrically, of course. So that's the second row dropped, and now you have much larger loading bay. Now the other thing is, if I want to fold the second row, I can do that from here as well. So that's going to drop the second row as well. But the problem here is that those seats, they don't completely fall flat. But if you come to the Merc, well, that's where the Mercedes has an advantage, because it has a button here that says all. So the moment you go for all, it'll fold the second as well as the third row completely flat. And I think that is quite cool, quite clever also, because now look at the space you've got. It is a Mercedes win in this department.
Spending around nearly 2 crore for a luxury SUV, you would imagine the dealer to roll out the red carpet and deliver your vehicle within a blink of an eye. But sorry to burst your bubble, that's not the case. Despite their eye-watering price tags, there are a lot of takers for these full-size German SUVs in India. And that means there is a long queue. The waiting period for the GLS is anywhere between 3 to 4 months, while for the X7 it's close to 2 months. So, if you're someone powerful, influential, and mostly busy and don't have time to wait for your new SUV, it's the BMW that will be relatively easier to get first.
As I said in the beginning, it's always quite tight between the BMW and a Mercedes. But in this test, as you can see in the final scores, it is the BMW that has beaten Mercedes 6-4. Now, it was a close battle, but in the end, it was the BMW that edged past. However, having said that, I still believe that if you are someone who cares about the second row experience more, if you want to be chauffeured around mostly, it is still the GLS that I'd pick because it makes you feel more special and it has got more comfort and more space in the second row. And I think that's what a lot of customers in this segment want, which is perhaps why this thing still outsells the X7. But coming back to the original point, which one is the winner? Well, it has got to be the X7 because objectively speaking, this is a more rounded product than the GLS.